What if the warmest smile in movies, the one that made you believe in goodness, was carrying the heaviest load when the cameras turned off? What if the man who played everyday heroes was fighting private battles that don't fit on a poster? Tonight, we're stepping into the real life of Tom Hanks, not the legend on the marquee, but the human being who kept showing up when life kept swinging. And trust me, by the end, you'll see his story in a way you never have before. Let's rewind to a kid who felt invisible long before the world knew his name. Tom Hanks, born July 9th, 1956, didn't grow up in a cushy fairy tale. His family split when he was little, and stability basically packed its bags and left with it. He moved a lot. New schools, new apartments, new walls that didn't feel like his. It's hard to build roots when you're living out of boxes. He wore hand me downs longer than he wanted to admit, learned to be grateful for any space that was his, and figured out early that needing too much meant getting your heart bruised. But there was one place where the shy kid got to breathe under the stage lights. A creaky school auditorium, buzzing bulbs, a script in his hand. Suddenly, people listened. Applause didn't just sound good, it felt like oxygen. And then the curtain fell, and there he was again, back to some borrowed bed in a new room that still smelled like someone else's life. Years later, he'd call his childhood lonely. That one word tells you almost everything, but it also explains the promise he made to himself. If he ever found a voice, he'd use it to make other people feel seen. Adulthood didn't welcome him with a hug. It tossed him the bus fare and said, "Good luck." He left college, grabbed an old typewriter and a suitcase, and headed for a city that didn't care if he disappeared. New York looked magical on postcards, but in person it could be brutally indifferent. Rent was ridiculous, rooms were cramped, and dinner sometimes meant counting coins. Auditions kept hope alive until they didn't. He'd walk out of rooms thinking, they didn't see a leading man. They saw a skinny kid with unsure edges. In an industry that rewards sharp elbows, his kindness read like a disadvantage, so he did the only thing he could. He worked. He took tiny roles, off-Broadway gigs, any job with a foot in the door. He learned backstage too, building sets, hanging lights, sweeping floors at the Great Lakes Theater Festival. He didn't just chase scenes, he studied every nut and bolt that makes a story stand up. Show up, work hard, keep going. That became the rhythm. And finally, a crack of daylight, a sitcom called Bosom Buddies. Yes, it was quirky. Yes, it was short-lived. But it was a paycheck, a platform, and a sign that the grind wasn't for nothing. From there, the climb looked smooth to the people in the seats. It wasn't. He moved from comedy to drama with the kind of control you only get after years of being underestimated. Big made folks fall in love with his gentleness. Philadelphia asked him to carry stigma, fear, and dignity all at once. He transformed for that role, and the weight he dropped for the character felt like something deeper he had to fend off when the set went quiet. Then came Forrest Gump, and a decision that became Hollywood lore, trading a big upfront paycheck for a share of the film's success. It paid off in history book numbers, but that kind of win comes with a new pressure. You did it once, can you do it again? And then there was Saving Private Ryan, where the violence had to be honored without spectacle. Not a role you leave at the door of your trailer, or Cast Away, where the production literally paused so his body could catch up to the character's isolation. Imagine months of speaking to almost no one on camera, trying to bottle the ache of solitude so viewers could feel it. A performance like that leaves echoes, quiet ones, but heavy. Here's the part the spotlight doesn't reveal. The price? Awards look shiny, pressure does not. Publicity, schedules, expectation, being America's everyman, sounds sweet until you realize it's something you've got to carry everywhere. He once described success like standing in a beautiful room with a door that's softly locked. Inside looks perfect, but you're still stuck. That'll mess with anyone's head. Now, behind the career reels, real life kept asking for more. His first marriage to Samantha Lewis wasn't about fairy tale timing. It was the two young people trying to build shelter from the drafty parts of life. He became a husband and a dad before he felt ready. And that's the kind of story you only understand fully in hindsight. Work took off. Fault lines widened. The marriage ended in the late 80s, and it hurt in a way no ovation could mute. He worried about his kids, Colin Hanks and Elizabeth Hanks, growing up between two homes, the very thing he'd lived through and hoped never to repeat. Imagine filming a scene about family and then walking back to a quiet room that reminds you where you're falling short. Those are the nights that don't trend, but they're the ones you remember. Life, of course, kept happening. Samantha later faced serious illness. He did what decent people do, showed up as often as he could, helped where help was needed, held a hand even when he couldn't change the ending. Not a headline, just a human keeping a promise to another human. Then came the chapter most of us know as the love story. He married Rita Wilson in 1988, a partnership that grew with time instead of spectacle. It looked effortless to the outside world. It wasn't. In 2015, Rita was diagnosed with breast cancer. She underwent major surgery and the long, slow climb back to health. That was not a problem that fame could fix. It was appointments, recovery, hope, and the daily job of being there. He has said in quieter moments that she saved his life more than once. So he did what love requires, stand steady, hour by hour. He also had his own health news, type 2, diabetes, diagnosed in 2013. No big announcement, no dramatics, just a quiet, disciplined shift in how he lives. And then 2020 happened. While working in Australia, Tom and Rita were among the first major public figures to test positive for COVID-19. The world panicked, they got sick, taste and smell faded, energy vanished, fear crept in. For him, older now with a condition that complicates everything, the risk felt real. The two of them faced it side by side in a room where the only special effect was the beep of hospital machines. When recovery finally came, it didn't reset the clock. It reminded them how fragile time can be. Here's something we don't talk about enough. Resilience isn't loud. It's not always a motivational quote and a sunrise jog. Sometimes it's a walk that leaves you winded when it didn't a year ago. Sometimes it's getting on a stage with a steadier smile than your nerves deserve. And sometimes it's looking at the work you love and thinking, how much longer can I do this at the level I owe people? Those questions don't make a person weak, they make them honest. And then there's the hardest job any man ever takes on, being a dad. The public likes to call him America's dad. Sounds cute until you remember parenting isn't a brand, it's a battlefield. His son, Chet Hanks, has been open about struggles with addiction and the chaos that came with it. That's not a scandal to a father, that's a wound. Tom did what he's always done, stayed present, offered help, tried to hold space without enabling, and kept the family circle intact. Recovery isn't a straight line, it's a road, and no trophy makes that road smoother. The good news? Chet has spoken about getting sober and moving forward. The truth? Scars still ache sometimes, that's real life. His other children have carved their own paths. Colin built a career with quiet integrity and a sense of humor that feels inherited in the best way. Elizabeth chooses a more private lane on her own terms. Truman Hanks, the youngest, has stepped into the industry with caution and curiosity. Through it all, Tom isn't a judge, he's a compass. He knows how strange it is to grow up in a shadow that big, and he tries to be the light instead of the pressure. Let's talk about success now, not the red carpet kind, the quiet kind. These days, he chooses projects that feed his soul more than his shelf. Thoughtful films, work with friends he trusts. He's become the kind of artist who sees storytelling as a service, something that should leave people a little less alone than it found them, he writes. He talks about craft with the curiosity of a beginner. He says out loud that most of his movies didn't land perfectly in his own eyes, and somehow that humility makes the hits feel even bigger. At home, life is calmer, not pain-free, not problem-free, just steadier. There's a house in Los Angeles where sunlight spills across floors and mornings feel unhurried. Summers often mean Greece, where Tom and Rita walk slower, breathe deeper, and choose simplicity on purpose. It's not about flaunting anything, it's about gratitude. Philanthropy continues too. Support for cancer research, help for people without homes, and encouragement for the arts. He doesn't make a parade out of it, he just shows up again and again. Money talk, it's out there. People guess at numbers and square footage and what this or that cost. Here's the headline that matters. He treats wealth like a tool, not a trophy. The more interesting math is the hours he gives to causes, to community, to conversations that move people forward. And yes, the industry still calls. Collaborations with Steven Spielberg still sparkle. Projects like A Man Called Otto remind audiences that tenderness is as cinematic as explosions. He'll pop up on a podcast and drop a story that makes you feel like you're hearing it at a kitchen table, not on a feed. He'll nerd out about typewriters, then pivot to talking about how stories change people because they changed him. Does the pressure ever stop? Not really. Perfectionism never clocks out. Self-doubt still whispers after a long day. There's the fear every artist carries that people love you for who you were yesterday. Age doesn't mute it. Age just gives you better questions to ask in return. He answers them by staying useful, by being kind on purpose, by listening harder than he speaks, by choosing work that might help someone get through a rough week. And maybe that's the thread that stitches his whole life together. The kid who felt unseen turned into a man whose work makes other people feel seen. The young husband who wasn't ready became a partner who held the line through cancer and uncertainty. The struggling actor became a quiet giant who turned applause into responsibility. The dad who worried about repeating old patterns did the brave thing. He kept showing up for his kids, even when showing up didn't look heroic from the outside. There's one more thing people don't realize: respect can be lonely. When you're the safe pair of hands in a business built on noise, you can walk into a packed room and feel like nobody's there. He's honest about that. He's honest about the hotel rooms that still feel too quiet sometimes. And he's honest that peace isn't a prize you win, it's a practice you keep, morning after morning, choice after choice. Today, you'll see him taking regular walks, laughing with Rita, waving at fans, and yes, occasionally getting stuck in traffic like the rest of us. He'll stop to take a photo and make the stranger across from him feel like the only person on the sidewalk. That's his superpower. Not the roles, not the money. Simple decency, repeated on purpose. So what endures when the lights fade? Not just the movies, though there's a shelf full of them. Forrest Gump, Saving Private Ryan, Castaway, Philadelphia, Big, and so many more. What lasts is the way he treats people, the way he turns empathy into a habit, the way he carries scars without letting them harden his heart, the way he keeps choosing hope, not because it's easy, but because it's useful. If you've ever walked out of a theater feeling lighter, if a single line made you call your dad, text a friend, or forgive yourself for a minute, that's the work. That's why the kid who felt alone kept climbing, not for applause, for connection. Here's the part that sticks with me. Greatness didn't make Tom Hanks untouchable, it made him responsible. He learned to use fame like a flashlight, not a mirror, shining it on stories that help people breathe easier. That's the legacy, not just the iconic roles, but the daily choice to be decent when no one's keeping score. When setbacks came, health scares, family storms, the quiet doubts that hit at 3 a.m., he didn't pretend they weren't real. He named them, faced them, and kept moving with Rita Wilson at his side, proof that courage can be soft spoken and still rock solid. So if you're carrying something heavy right now, take a page from his playbook. Show up anyway, even if the room doesn't seem to need you yet. Start small, stay kind, and keep your promise to the person you want to be. And hey, drop your favorite Tom Hanks moment in the comments. Was it a line, a look, a scene that landed when you needed it most? Hit like if this story gave you a little lift, and subscribe for more true human deep dives. Let's keep the light on for each other. And yes, he's still managing health stuff. Diabetes doesn't take days off. Aging asks for patience. The body needs more rest now than it once did. He listens to it. He adapts. He keeps going. Is that glamorous? Nope. Is it heroic? In its own quiet way, absolutely. So when you see Tom Hanks smiling in an interview or shaking hands on a red carpet, remember what it took to get there: the moves, the lonely nights, the busted auditions, the near misses, the heartbreak, the hospital rooms, the tough conversations with kids he loves, the walks that got shorter and then longer again, the relentless decision to be kind in a world that often rewards the opposite. If you only remember one thing, let it be this: the gentlest face in movies didn't arrive by accident. Tom Hanks earned that steadiness the hard way, by surviving a restless childhood, by grinding through years of no, by loving when it hurt, by standing beside Rita Wilson through illness and fear, by accepting his own limits and showing up anyway, and by turning success into service instead of a shield. That's not a Hollywood myth, that's a life. Now, if any moment in this story hit home, if a performance of his helped you through a tough week, if a line still sits on your heart, drop a tribute in the comments and tell us what it was. Tap that like button to send a little love to the kindest man in the business, and subscribe if you want more deep dive stories told with heart. Because the best movies end when the credits roll, but the people behind them, their real stories keep going. Let's keep telling them together.